Well, all right. Guess we're live. Hey, something new here. I wanted to see how well I could do a live video with my laptop out in front of me, and I figured I'd just use this background and we'll go for it. I'm going to be talking about three common problems with that pet dog owners have and practical solutions to solve them. So number one is going to be like my dog won't take food during training. Number two will be my dog runs away during playtime. Okay. And then number three is my dog is leash reactive, or it's pulling while on the leash, or it gets really excited while we're on for a walk. So I'm just going to quickly go through these. I've probably got about 10 minutes here. Hopefully I'll do this in about 10 minutes, maybe 15, and we'll go from there and we'll get it done. Right now, Piper is actually licking my leg. So anyway, so number one, my dog won't take food during training. There's many different reasons for this. Oftentimes, the dog is not hungry. That's probably one of the main things. Like let's say people will come for a training session shortly after they give their dog a meal, and the dog just simply won't take food during the training session. So sometimes we just say, hey, let's just withhold the meal, and then we'll use that kibble or that raw food during the training session. Okay, so that's number one. The second thing would be a lot of people get used to feeding their dog treats, high value treats in a low stimulation environment. So for example, let's say the food that you're feeding your dog is like an 8 out of 10 food, but you're using it in your kitchen, in your house, right? Throughout the house, maybe even in your backyard. So low stimulation environments. The dog gets used to having a really high value treat in an environment where they actually only need maybe kibble. Okay. So that's one thing. So what we would do is switch that around. We would use kibble in the house. We would hand feed the dog. And then in situations where the intensity levels up, right? So maybe we're moving to a 2, 3, 4, 5 in sort of the distraction in the environment. So a higher level environment. What we do is increase the ante of the food, or we move into play. Okay, so but if we're trying to get food into the dog during a session like this, maybe what we'll do is, again, one, not feed them right before the session, and then two, bring up the value of the food. That's one thing we can do. But I would actually prefer go to the next step, which would be to make the dog sort of work for the food. I like the word play. Make the dog play for their food more often. It'll build food drive. So one example of that would be taking the kibble and putting it into a box, let's say, putting into a bucket, or putting into an area where the dog has to move things around to get to the food. So they're sniffing, they're moving things around, they're having to work a little bit more for their food. And then what that will do is increase the drive for that food. And then when we take that food into a different space, the dog has a higher drive to get that food. Because what typically happens with a lot of the dogs that won't take food during training, it's they're in many cases they have food available for them all day long, so they're free grazers. Food is just put in the bowl and they can just go at it. The other thing would be the food value is too low, so maybe they just don't like the food. Or the last thing would be is they just don't have the drive for the food. So what we try to do is build that drive. We change the value of the food, and have the appropriate value of food in the appropriate environment. So if I was going to take my dog to work on the opposite side of the fence of a dog park and expect that she's going to use kibble in that area when she's always getting high value treats in the house, it's likely not going to happen. So we stop using high value treats in the house. We use kibble in the house. We build the drive for the kibble, and we bring that slowly out into the community, the backyard, the front yard, the community. And then eventually the dog has a much higher desire to work with that food. All right. So that's that. I mean, in a nutshell, we increase the desire for the food, we increase the value of the food, and we shift and change how we're working with it. So moving on to number two, run away during play. My dog runs away during play. I hear that a lot. Okay, like my dog doesn't like to play, or when we play, my dog gets a toy and then takes off. And it's a big game of keep away. Well, what happens is the dog runs away and then you chase the dog likely, and that becomes a reinforcing event for the dog. So big time solution for this is put a leash on the dog. Okay? If we have a leash on the dog during play, we can still allow the dog to run around and give them those opportunities to sort of parade and show what they won during the play session. But then we have the ability to reel them back in and re-engage with us during a play session. So a good example of that would be if I'm playing with a dog I'm working with, and I don't have them on the leash, and they're typically used to running away, and I don't chase them, they're either going to, one, stay away from me and just enjoy the toy that they won, okay? Or two, they're going to slowly come back to me. And when they do come back to me and I re-engage, they're going to learn that, oh, play is actually better when I come towards Carl or come towards the handler, okay? So the best way for us to work with that is to use a leash, even if it's a longer line, even if it's a 10-foot line. Okay, we give the dog a 10-foot a perimeter so that they can use that in the game. So that we play tug, the dog gets a win, and then they parade around for a little bit, and then we slowly lure them back into us and then re-engage in the game of tug and go from there. The other thing we can do is throw a ball. The dog runs to get the ball, and then we run away from the dog, and then get that leash pull in so the dog then comes back to us. And then over time, the dog will figure that out. Oh, wow. Every time they move away from me and I move back towards them, we get to re-engage in the game, and it becomes a lot more fun. And then eventually that leash comes off and the dog continues to come back to you for play. So moving on to number 3 and the last one here for this video. My dog is leash reactive, or my dog is overexcited, or my dog is pulling, my dog is barking at other dogs and such, people, bikes, all of that. There's a lot of different ways we can manage this. But number one, I think what we have to do is figure out why the dog is acting like that. Once we understand the type of reactivity, whether it's fear-based, whether it's arousal-based, that type of stuff, then what we can do is we can shift and change how we're working with the dog, and then go through a process of teaching play, okay? So that the dog, I'll go back really quickly. First thing we do is we manage it, right? If the dog is reactive on your street and it's constantly pulling and barking and lunging, so then you stop taking the dog for walks for a few weeks. Now, what do we do to replace that? So that's a management process, right? We don't take them down that area where they're normally reactive. Well, we can put them in the car. We can drive to a big field. We can put them on a long line, and we can work with that where there's less chance of the dog being around the triggers, that the things that usually set them off. Okay. And then eventually over time, we get them closer and closer and closer and closer to those things that usually set them off. Okay. So we manage, and then we bring up training over time. Okay. So with that, so if this was management and this was training, so in this case, we're doing a lot of management, okay, but we're also doing some training, and then they eventually sort of shift and change, and then we do less management and more training, and then eventually the dog is able to sort of overcome those things that would have set them off. So that's management, okay? So we go to different areas, go to a big park. What I had to do for a while when I first got Piper, because she was quite overwhelmed in an area where she saw a lot of the things that set her off, I would walk in the alleyways, because there's much less chance of interacting with the things or the people or the dogs that set her off. Another thing I did is I would go to an industrial area where there's very low chance of seeing another dog, and we would walk around and we would do our skill drills and our play in there. Okay, so that's management. Okay, now the other piece would be ritual. Okay, so within ritual, there's a number of different things. Play. Okay, so we were creating a ritual for our walks. So if every time you're going to take your dog for a walk, you pull the leash off the wall and the dog goes crazy, well, then they're going to be crazy when they go out the door, and they're going to be crazy walking down the street. So we start with a ritual in the house. We set them up to be calm. Okay, we teach them how to be calm before they get out the door. Then we go into the backyard and we have some fun. We sort of let off some steam for maybe 5 minutes, okay? We play with the dog. We throw the ball, we play tug, we throw the ball, we play tug. We continue that process. And in play, we work with a specific set of rules and boundaries in that game as well. So the dog understands when it can be aroused and when it has to be calm. Okay. And then the transitions in between that. So we get out of the house, we play, and then we work on some more threshold manners. So if we're going through a gate to get out into the sidewalk, as an example, we would work on that threshold manners there, so the dog understands it's time to be calm, to settle in. I have to wait. The gate gets open. I don't go out until my handler tells me it's time to go out, and then we go from there. And what I also like to do is some sort of loose leash walking skill drill. And I often do like a pack drive type thing where I'm walking figure eights or I'm walking straight line back and forth, just working on engagement in that process where the dog is learning to pay attention to the handler. Okay. So if I turn left, the dog turns left. If I turn right, the dog turns right, instead of the dog pulling out in front of me. The dog goes out in front of me, I turn and walk the other way. So in that process, the dog learns to, again, stay in touch and then become sort of a team in that process. So again, we've got threshold out into the yard. We play, we do threshold manners to go out into the street or the sidewalk. And then we do some sort of skill drill. And then while we're on our walk, okay, we're working on those loose leash walking skill drills. So the dog is expected to either heel beside us or is allowed to have a loose leash in that bubble, the length of the leash. So if the leash was 6 feet long, the dog has a 6-foot bubble around us until we tell the dog to heel beside us and walk nicely beside us. Okay. And the dog doesn't leave that space until we release it to then go ahead and sniff around and stuff. So that comes with communication. And so there's some other videos that I have about that in terms of transitioning from one phase or one state of mind into another. So we use communication words or markers in order to do that. So I'll talk about that in more detail in another video. Piper just brought me something. She's like, hey, I want to play. Not time to play right now. Okay. So, and then the last thing we do is we decompress. Okay. So we've gone through our whole walk sequence. We've walked for a while, and then we spend some time decompressing. And usually what I do is a little bit more pack drive where we're slowly walking, changing directions, stopping every once in a while. The dog should be expected to stop with us when we stop. And then we just sit around. Okay. And we can do that while we're on the walk too. Sometimes I do that. We call it Netflix and chill. We go out to a field, sit on a picnic bench, and just sit and watch for about 5 minutes, help the dog learn to settle and calm. And then we do that at the end of the walk as well. I like to sit on the front deck after a training session or after a walk just for about 15 minutes so that Piper learns to settle on her own. I don't ask her to lie down. I don't ask her to sit. She just eventually does it. And then I capture that and I say, good lay down, good girl. And we just hang out there for a little while. So there you go. I hope this helps. We've got 3 common problems for pet dogs and some practical solutions for each. Okay, and number 1 was my dog won't take food during training sessions. We gave you some solutions for that. Building drive, not feeding the dog just before the training session, perhaps changing how you provide food for the dog in the house, that type of thing, and building value for the food, make the dog work for the food a little bit. And then number two was my dog runs away during play, and the easiest solution for that is to use a leash and then work with that and help the dog understand that coming back to you is the best way to continue to engage in play. Number 3, the last one, of course, was leash reactivity, and we're doing management. Okay, we're removing the dog from the things and the people and the areas that cause the problems, and then we're going to be working on creating and establishing a ritual around the walking process so that the dog has a better understanding of what we're doing. That's it. I hope you have some sort of aha moment or learning from this. And if you have any questions, please send them my way, and I'll be happy to answer them in more detail or make another video like this, or even show you what it looks like with the dog as well. All right. Happy training.